lies at the edge of time, the tale of the dawn of mankind. Beyond forever. Just a passing moment in time.
Every child dreams about what they want to be when they grow up. For me, after watching the syndicated original Star Trek on television and the original Star Wars Episode 4 in theaters, there was no doubt in my mind. I wanted to become a filmmaker. The whole idea excited me very much. But then came the first major stumbling block of my life. How does someone go about learning how to make movies and TV shows? My less than supportive parents had no clue, nor did any of my teachers at school. So I set out to learn the craft as best as I could through books. I learned the nuts and bolts of the process of filmmaking, but nowhere did those books mention the existence of film schools, and I remained blissfully ignorant of internships in film schools for many more years. Oh, I learned about the Screenwriters Guild and various agencies and production companies, but nothing more useful than that. Meanwhile, a story was filling my head. My story. The story I was meant to tell. The same as George Lucas had Star Wars and Gene Roddenberry had Star Trek. But my story had no title, just a series of random images and plot lines swirling around in my brain. Over the years, I ran into the occasional actor or producer who probably thought I was a kook and never pointed me into any of the right directions. And my agent during my struggling learn-as-you-go screenwriting days was as lousy gets. He was no help to me at all with his vague and incorrect, I would later discover, corrections and critiques of my early works. He told me to write for Star Trek Deep Space Nine, but he told me all of the wrong ways to go about doing it. As a result, my scripts looked embarrassingly amateurish, and I was determined to learn the correct way and vindicate myself. And it was around this time that I learned about film schools and internships. I began to save my money in an effort to attend, but my parents fell ill and needed my help. My siblings never raised a finger to assist me, always focusing on themselves and their own lives, so the complete and total care of my parents fell upon me. For 10 years, every cent I had went into their care, and I was forced to file bankruptcy to ease my growing mountain of debt, since my mother's cancer treatments weren't cheap. Because my folks lived nearly 60 miles from the nearest doctor, gasoline for the car alone came to approximately $400 a month. After my mom died in 1998, my dad had a stroke and needed around-the-clock care until his death in 2001. Care I was in debt for years after his death. But as painful as the whole ordeal was, it brought me closer to my parents than I ever thought possible. Unfortunately, my fledgling film career had been moved to the back burner during all of this, and the time had come to begin anew. Sadly, I soon discovered that each of my Hollywood contacts had moved on, and my debt problem was making it difficult to plan on internships in film school. I was just barely making a living, still dreaming all of my childhood dreams, and my story was still forming in my mind, still growing and evolving, and becoming more complicated and rich with each passing year. That was about the time I met Patricia Ramirez, the woman I would eventually marry, and I concentrated on her for a while. She was older than me, and I found her wickedly exciting to say the least. We were married in 2003, which brought about a whole new set of financial responsibilities, primarily making a life for my wife and myself. We even moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee in the hopes of a brighter future. But when I was younger, in the years following 1991, I taught myself to draw and paint, hoping to bring some of my creations to two-dimensional life. In my attempt to gain access to the film world, my art helped a local restaurant, a rodeo, several garage bands. I storyboarded a couple of short films, television commercials, and an after-school special. Plus, I designed sets for infomercials and a game show called Dirty Little Secret. How much do you know about the one you love? Unfortunately, I was no nearer to my own goals. To say I was getting frustrated would be a gross understatement. But now I found myself a husband with new responsibilities. I couldn't afford college or public education courses without some sort of an employment schedule conflict. My dreams of a film career, my television series, and my direct-to-video or internet series officially became things of the past. I couldn't even afford to rent cameras and equipment, much less afford actors. People kept asking me, why didn't I consider writing my story as a novel? The answer was that I never learned how to write one. Reading a book is quite different than writing one, and a novel is a far different beast than a screenplay. Besides, my story, then known as the Aeonian Tales, had always been designed for a visual medium. Nothing against novelists, but for me, a novel is just words on paper. But a film or television show brings those words to life. Each actor and actress brings their own unique qualities to the characters beyond the written word. Plus, a top-notch creative team can take a mediocre story and transform it into gold. Just look at Star Trek and Star Wars as examples. When Gene Roddenberry created Star Trek in the 1960s, he created a story described as Wagon Train to the Stars. I read that his understanding of what future technology would be like was somewhat imperfect. That Mr. Spock was originally from Mars with red skin, and he was going to ingest energy pellets through a metal plate in his stomach. That's not to say that Gene wouldn't have crafted an entertaining story, but it wouldn't have had the cult following that it has today. Star Trek enjoys the status it does for many reasons. Matt Jeffries' designs jump to the forefront. The USS Enterprise, NCC 1701, is undoubtedly the most recognized spaceship in entertainment history. Add to that the performances by William Shatner, DeForest Kelley, Leonard Nimoy, and the rest of the cast, both regular and guest, brought those characters to amazing life. And some of the most memorable moments and episodes came from staff writers, including the friendly insults thrown back and forth between Spock and McCoy. That was brilliant stuff, and it took a creative team to bring it to reality. These are just a few examples, but it just goes to show how a creative team can polish an idea and produce a gem. Star Wars is another classic example of creative collaboration. From Ralph McQuarrie's paintings and designs to Anthony Daniels' portrayal of C-3PO to the entire creation of Darth Vader. George Lucas originally envisioned Vader as a cloaked figure wearing a samurai-like helmet. An early draft of the script for Episode 4 had Vader walking through open space, protected by the Force, as he passed from one spaceship to another. An artist read that and drew a mask on Vader so that he could breathe in the vacuum of space. George never envisioned a mask, but he liked it enough to keep it. He gave a reason for it, a life-supporting device he couldn't live without. Add Ben Burtt's breathing sound effects and the voice of James Earl Jones, and you have a villain more memorable than mere words. Also, let's not forget John Williams' musical score, music that never would have existed if the script was never written. It's all part of the magic of the filmed medium. I always dreamed of assembling a creative team to bring Beyond Forever to brilliant and amazing life. To watch my flawed creations become more than even I could have imagined. But unfortunately, that's never going to happen. And I have to endeavor to get my story out into the world by any means possible. But thanks to social media, I can now tell the story, complete with all of its flaws and imperfections. And what's going to follow in the videos to come? The story is with what has been stewing in my brain since childhood. The universe I've created is filled with my friends, folks who have been a part of me my whole life. I can trace their birth back to a moment in May of 1978. And these people, they deserve to have life. And it's with great pride that I can finally set them all free. So, for your listening pleasure, I, William Jude Martin McQueen, give you the television series that you will never see. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Beyond Forever. Thank you.